Have you ever felt so invisible that even heaven seems silent? Have you ever gone to sleep with an empty stomach, staring into the darkness and wondering if your prayers simply fade before they rise? There are seasons in life when everything feels unbearably quiet, when the world moves on as if it has forgotten your name. Yet sometimes, in the very moment you feel most abandoned, a test is walking beside you. And hidden inside that test is a doorway. Stay with this story until the end, because one decision made on a lonely road will transform a boy's destiny and uncover a quiet truth about faith, mercy, and how unseen hearts are never truly ignored. In a small countryside village wrapped in open fields and long dusty roads lived a boy named Ethan. The village was peaceful on the surface, the kind of place where neighbors exchanged news quickly and gossip traveled faster than the wind. Yet for all its closeness, it somehow failed to see the silent suffering of one child. Ethan's home stood on the very edge of the settlement, where farmland slowly dissolved into tall grass and empty silence, as if even the earth had stepped back. The house was little more than a fragile wooden shack, assembled from cracked planks and patched sheets of rusted tin. When strong winds swept across the fields, the walls trembled and groaned like something exhausted from standing too long. During storms, rain slipped through the broken roof and gathered in small, muddy pools across the dirt floor. At night, the cold air crept through every gap, wrapping the room in a restless chill. Still, Ethan called that place home because it was the only shelter he had left. Once it had been filled with life. His father had worked the land with powerful, weathered hands, returning each evening tired but steady. His mother had kept warmth alive inside those thin walls, humming gentle songs while stirring simple meals, whispering prayers when the candles burned low. Then, illness arrived without warning and without mercy. First, it took his father, slowly draining the strength from his broad shoulders. Soon after, it reached for his mother. The funerals were short, the words spoken quickly, carried away by wind and routine. The villagers expressed sympathy, but life continued at its usual pace. Crops still needed tending, markets still opened at dawn, and Ethan remained behind. At an age when most children were guided and shielded, Ethan learned the quiet language of survival. He worked wherever hands were needed, hauling water from wells, chopping wood until blisters split his skin, helping farmers gather harvest beneath the burning sun. Some evenings he earned a few small coins. Other days he received only a thin bowl of soup placed silently into his hands. Hunger stopped feeling like an emergency and settled into routine. Loneliness no longer surprised him. It became his constant companion. Silence grew loud, filling the spaces where laughter once lived. Yet among all that loss, his mother had left him something more enduring than food or walls. She had left him a lesson. When times were hardest and meals were small, she would divide what little they had and say softly, "Ethan, when you have little, give a little. Do not allow hardship to harden your heart. Generosity keeps it alive. Even the smallest gift, if given with love, is never wasted." Those words rooted themselves deep inside him. When his stomach twisted with hunger, he remembered her voice. When bitterness tried to settle in his chest like cold stone, he remembered her gentle smile. He carried her teaching like a warm pebble in his pocket, small, smooth, comforting. It reminded him that who he chose to be mattered more than what he lacked. One evening, after hours of labor beneath a relentless sun, Ethan walked home along the dusty road with a small cloth sack tucked beneath his arm. Inside rested a piece of bread and a handful of rice, just enough for one simple meal. His muscles ached and his legs felt heavy, but there was quiet relief in knowing that tonight he would not sleep entirely empty. Instead of taking the shorter road, he chose the longer path beside the river. The shade of leaning trees and the steady murmur of flowing water gave his tired thoughts a place to rest. As he walked, he whispered a soft prayer. He did not ask for riches or comfort. He asked only for strength to remain kind in a world that often was not. Halfway along the river path, he noticed a figure seated upon a flat stone near the water's edge. An elderly man leaned heavily on a wooden staff. His clothing was covered in dust, and his shoulders sagged as though the road itself had pressed him downward. His face carried the deep lines of long travel and quiet endurance. When Ethan approached, the old man slowly lifted his head. "Young man," he said gently, his voice thin but steady, "I have not eaten today. I have walked far, and my strength is fading. If you have even the smallest bite to spare, I would be grateful." The request hung in the warm evening air. Ethan stopped. His fingers tightened around the cloth sack. That food was meant to be his dinner. Without it, the night would stretch long and empty. The simplest answer would be to apologize and continue walking. No one would judge him. No one would ever know. Survival often demanded hard choices. But within his chest, another voice rose quietly. "When you have little, give a little." He felt the familiar ache, the struggle between protecting himself and protecting the kindness his mother had planted in him. Hunger whispered one answer. Memory whispered another. Slowly, Ethan knelt beside the man. He opened the sack and removed the largest piece of bread. With the edge of his sleeve, he brushed away the dust and held it out with steady hands. "Please," he said softly, "eat first." The old man accepted the bread with trembling fingers and bowed his head in gratitude. The old traveler ate slowly, as though each bite carried meaning beyond hunger. Ethan offered him water from a small flask and remained beside him, waiting patiently. When the man attempted to stand and his knees faltered, Ethan reached out to steady him. For a while, they spoke quietly by the river's gentle current. The old man asked about Ethan's life, and Ethan answered honestly. He spoke of losing his parents, of working long days for simple meals, of the constant effort not to let hardship shape him into someone bitter. The traveler listened without interruption, his gaze calm and thoughtful, as though weighing not the boy's poverty, but his spirit. When at last the man felt strong enough to continue, he placed a hand upon Ethan's shoulder. "You possess a rare heart," he said firmly. "Do not let this world shrink it." His eyes lingered for a moment, deep and knowing. Then he turned and walked down the river path, gradually disappearing among the trees and fading light. That night, Ethan returned home with only a small portion of rice remaining. He ate quietly and lay down upon his thin mattress. His stomach was not full, yet his spirit felt strangely steady. Peace rested over him like a soft blanket. He slept more deeply than he had in many weeks. At dawn the next morning, unfamiliar sounds shattered the village's calm routine. The sharp rhythm of horse hooves echoed against stone. Urgent voices carried through the narrow streets. Church bells rang suddenly, not for mourning, but for announcement. Ethan stepped outside his fragile home and froze at the sight before him. In the village square stood a magnificent carriage, polished to brilliance, guarded by uniformed riders. Villagers gathered in stunned silence as finely dressed officials moved among them. A herald raised a decorated staff and called out clearly, "By order of His Majesty the King, a boy named Ethan is summoned. Step forward." Fear tightened around Ethan's chest. He felt every pair of eyes turned toward him. Slowly, uncertainly, he walked toward the square. The grand carriage door opened. From within stepped the old man from the river, but no longer bent or weary. He stood upright, clothed in robes trimmed with gold thread. A simple circlet rested upon his head. The dust and fatigue were gone, replaced with calm authority. Recognition struck Ethan like sudden light. The traveler's eyes were the same, steady and knowing. "You offered bread when you had almost nothing," the king said in a clear, measured voice. "I journeyed through my lands in humble disguise to learn the true character of my people. Kindness given without expectation is rarer than jewels. Yesterday you revealed your heart." The village remained silent, the weight of the moment pressing upon every witness. "I have no child to inherit my responsibilities," the king continued. "I seek not wealth, but integrity. You will come with me. You will be educated, trained, and prepared, not to rule with pride, but to serve with understanding. What you receive, you must one day give." Ethan's world shifted in a single breath. Yet as he looked around at the cracked roads and familiar faces, he understood something deeply. His life was changing, but the core of who he was must not. He nodded slowly, not from ambition, but from quiet acceptance. Years unfolded in ways he could never have imagined. Ethan studied history, leadership, justice, and compassion. He trained not only his mind, but his character. Whenever decisions were discussed, he remembered the ache of hunger. When laws were shaped, he remembered the silence of loneliness. He listened carefully to farmers, workers, widows, and children. He never forgot the river path, nor the moment when kindness cost him his dinner. That choice became the foundation of every other choice. The king's test had not arrived with thunder or spectacle. It came disguised as need. It arrived quietly, asking for bread. And so Ethan learned a truth that many overlook. Heaven often answers not with loud miracles, but with small opportunities. God speaks through moments, through strangers, through decisions made when no one else is watching. What seems like inconvenience may be invitation. What feels like sacrifice may become seed.